Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 23 team selection where I have 3 free transfers and a double Game Week to attack. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, because I didn't do a transfer plans video earlier this week because I was spending some time with the family at home, I thought I would briefly review my Game Week 22 in my team selection, because usually I would do it in that video, and obviously any excuse to discuss a game week where I get a big green arrow, and it was the first green arrow in a while. I had 4 red arrows in a row, so I desperately needed it. But yeah, all out it was 71 points, which essentially halved my rank from about 300k to just inside the top 150k. I'm aware that not every game would go like this, and I could very easily go in the opposite direction, but this is much more what I was hoping for from my team, because in all honesty, I've really liked my team in recent weeks. It's just not quite been doing it for me. All you need is that one game week to just reignite the spark with FPL, and I'm obviously very, very happy to have had that, so I'm not going to sit here for too long and discuss all of it. But some of the key decisions for me, playing 4 at the back felt pretty weird. It was the first time this season I've done it, but a lot of my points came from my defenders. Now, in all honesty, if I'd played 3 at the back, we discussed on the deadline stream, the player that I would have benched was probably Gabriel for Rodgers. So I was going back and forth in my mind. Do I back the Arsenal clean sheet? Do I back Villa to score? It just so happens that Villa scored 2, but both Gabriel and Rodgers only got 1 point. So that decision didn't really matter. But this does go to show that having more defenders, playing 4 at the back, doesn't always result in fewer points, because Trent, Robinson and Munoz all delivering clean sheets. Robinson and Trent getting bonus, and obviously the assist from Trent as well. That's fantastic. If you've got attacking defenders that can pick up clean sheets and bonus points, then that's obviously ideal. And it was a weird week because a lot of my players were playing away from home, and you don't usually expect things such as clean sheets from teams that are away. But once again, it does also show that you don't always back the home advantage. Sometimes away teams can do very well, and this was the case this week. I do think it was a bit of a one-off, but it was still nice to see those defenders get the points for me. Obviously, Sanchez was so disappointing once again. He was the reason for the lack of Chelsea clean sheet, because outside of that, they weren't too troubled, but it was another real howler, and we'll discuss Sanchez in the next section because he is proving to be a real issue for me. And all of a sudden, I'm now worried, does he get dropped? Because that is now 4 errors leading directly to a goal in the Premier League this season. The only goalkeeper that has made more errors was, I think, Muric, who's made 5. That's not good enough for a team that are challenging, well, they were for the title, and at least challenging for the top 4. It's just absolutely not good enough. So I'm really worried about Sanchez's place, as we'll discuss in the next section. I only had 3 midfielders this week, which is Fernandes, Palmer, Salah. Palmer and Salah both blank, as well as Isak, by the way. The 3 big premiums all blanking. Fernandes, he didn't really do much in that game, I'll be honest. In fact, Manchester United really struggled against Brighton. This is why you have penalty takers. And I'm aware it won't always be your penalty taker, right? There are penalty takers I don't own. But when people talk about selling penalty takers for non-penalty takers or benching penalty takers, it never sits quite right with me unless they've got a really horrible fixture. So that's why I was very happy playing Fernandes, because you just never know. And he did very, very little in this game and comes away with 8 points. As I said, talking about penalties, Mateta also got a penalty. I will just note on the Mateta penalty, it was one of the worst penalties I've seen in a really, really long time. Fabianski really should have saved it. If Fabianski on my bench had saved a Mateta penalty, I probably would have cried. But generally, that was probably Mateta's best performance of the season. He's starting to grow into that role in the team a little bit more. I think after the Olympics, he struggled a little bit to get back into form. His fitness wasn't quite there, and I think it took him a little bit of time. But right now, we are seeing the Mateta that we saw from last season. He's now got 4 attacking returns in 3 games, and he's performing at an incredibly high level. And actually, Chris Wood also has 4 attacking returns in 3 games. The assist was a little bit fortunate, but he took his goal very well. The header was fantastic. So yeah, I brought Mateta in 4 game weeks ago, and he's got 4 attacking returns. I brought Chris Wood in 3 game weeks ago, and he's got 4 attacking returns in that time. So Mateta and Wood are absolutely saving me at the moment. And then, like I said, a little blank from Isak. He actually didn't have a shot until the 89th minute against Bournemouth. But if 3 players are going to blank, I don't mind it being Palmer, Salah, Isak, and then obviously Gabriel and Sanchez too. But all in all, it was a pretty good game week. Obviously, Enzo is... We'll have to discuss how long he might be out for, but he missed out, and then Rodgers 1 pointer on the bench as well. It couldn't have gone much, unless maybe a Salah return would have been nice, but it couldn't have gone much better for me. I think I'm now something like 12 or 13 points outside the top 100k. So the idea would be, hopefully, that maybe post double game week 24 we're inside the top 100k, although I know FPL doesn't always work out that way. If you are watching this section, let me know down below that you watched the entire video and you don't skip the review, and also let me know how many points you managed for game week 22. So guys, moving on to my game week 23 team selection. I currently have 3 free transfers and 1.5 million in the bank. So quite a lot of flexibility actually in terms of upgrades that I can make and also how many transfers I can make. I have looked at possibilities of using all of them. I've looked at potentially rolling, but I do foresee myself using at least 1 free transfer this week, and it probably will be to bring in a third Liverpool asset, as we'll discuss throughout the video. Let me know what your plans are for Game Week 23, and if you're also going to load up on 3 Liverpool as well. The team is currently rated at 96% according to Fantasy Football Hub, which has actually dropped slightly, maybe because I don't yet have that third Liverpool asset, but I am projected to get 72.1 points this week, which is actually a very decent number. That's one of my highest of the season, probably because I've got Salah captain at the moment against Ipswich at home. So, as I always say, let's start with the goalkeepers. And what I usually say when it's this section, I'm pretty happy with the goalkeepers. I'm not pretty happy with the goalkeepers anymore. Sanchez has been really stinking it up. I think he's got me 3 clean sheets across the period that I've owned him, which is great. 2 of them were 9 pointers, I believe, as well. Because the thing is, Chelsea are a decent defence. And I know people laugh when I say that. But what I mean is they don't actually give up too many high quality chances. They might concede 1 or 2 big chances a game. Yes, they concede a lot of shots as well, but that's great for Sanchez. You don't want to own a goalkeeper from a defence that don't concede shots, because then the goalkeeper can't make multiple saves. So what that means is Sanchez does sometimes come away with 3 or 4 points, or when he gets a clean sheet, it does tend to be 8, 9, 10, which is great. My issue is Sanchez is a horrible goalkeeper, and I apologise if anyone from Sanchez's family is watching me, but I think Chelsea fans will agree as well. He just makes so many mistakes. As I said, that is now 4 errors leading directly to a goal in the Premier League this season. Only Muric has made more with 5. That is not good enough for a goalkeeper playing for this club. He's not even very good with the ball at his feet. He's supposed to be a brilliant shot stopper, which in all fairness, I don't think he's a bad one. But at some point, Maresca has to stop being stubborn and start Jorgensen or sign another goalkeeper. It doesn't look like the latter will happen. But you do just wonder, how long is it going to be until Jorgensen gets to start in the Premier League that isn't just a random midweek game against like Southampton? I don't know that it will come against Man City. It would be a baptism of fire to put Jorgensen in for that. So maybe Sanchez does keep his place, but I guess what I'm saying is the fixtures coming up, City, West Ham, Brighton, Villa, maybe 1 clean sheet against West Ham, but I'm still not fully convinced of that. The City, Brighton and Villa games, I would be surprised if they keep a clean sheet. And I'm also worried about him losing his place. So now I'm sat here, and by the way, that Southampton game in 27, as you can see on the graphic, the one in 5 game weeks' time, that is a midweek deadline. I'm fully expecting that week anyway that Jorgensen starts, so you can almost write off that fixture as well. I think it might be time for me to sell Sanchez. This feels like a great exit point, because this week I would be so surprised if City don't score against Chelsea. Stranger things have happened, of course, and they're not in a fantastic run of form, but I would be surprised. But it does feel like a really good exit point. The other reason that I obviously like the idea of selling Sanchez is one of my options is ALISSON. And for ALISSON, well, it's virtually the perfect entry point. He's got Ipswich at home, a double game week Wolves. I guess the better entry point for ALISSON would have been last week when he picked up the 9-pointer. But I do really like ALISSON. And why do I like him? ALISSON's actually not that much more expensive than someone like a Pickford. Sells is getting there as well. He's cheaper than Araya. Even Sanchez, unless you're going all the way down to someone like Dean Henderson, ALISSON right now isn't that much more expensive than some of the other assets. The other reason that I like him is he's a very easy route for me into my third Liverpool, and I know that he starts every single game. Even if I go for Konate, with his injury doubts, apparently he's playing with painkillers, there's a slight worry there. Van Dijk is very expensive. Diaz is very expensive for my current midfield structure. And whilst I love Gakpo, and we'll discuss Gakpo when we move on to my front 3, it's not easy for me to get Gakpo into my team because my front 3 looks really, really solid. So when I look at the options that I have for triple Liverpool, assuming I want to go there, which I think I do, I think ALISSON makes the most sense in my team. You guys can let me know down below in the comments, but I would imagine if you were sat there with with Sanchez to ALISSON feels very good. And like I said, the pivot point just feels perfect. City away versus Ipswich at home. It will be classic FPL that Sanchez will outscore ALISSON this week, but you can't play based on random things that happen. You have to play based on what is in front of you, and I really like the switch this week. The other thing about ALISSON, by the way, is I think Liverpool are top 3 defences in the league, probably along with Forest and Arsenal. But they do also concede shots. We've seen that week after week after week. And as a result, I think he's had like an 8, a 9, and a 10 pointer this season, ALISSON. So whilst there will be some 6-pointers in there, he'll make a lot more saves than someone like a David Raya or an Edison of the past. So I just think Alisson's a really solid option. And he is quite cheap if you compare him to Trent, Van Dijk, Diaz, and Gakpo as well. So I think that is the current plan transfer is Sanchez to Alisson. It puts my defence then in a very strong position. It will be a double up with Trent. But to be honest, I'm happy with a double up with Trent for Ipswich at home, a double game week and then Wolves at home. Beyond that, there might be weeks where I can rotate Fabianski and there might be weeks where I can rotate Robinson if I really don't want to play double Liverpool defence. But at the end of the day, clean sheets aren't that common anyway. If someone is going to keep a clean sheet, I wouldn't put them... Like, I know City and Newcastle after that is really not fantastic, but at the same time, they are a big team that can dominate games. You wouldn't be hugely surprised if they do keep a clean sheet in one of those. So I just think it's really nice. And like I said, I've got Trent in the team already. I still think Trent is the second best Liverpool asset. I look at the fixtures coming up over the next 3. It screams returns. I guess the only worry would be if he doesn't start one of the next 4 games or the next 3 game weeks. But I just think Bradley's going to start against PSV. Bradley will probably start against Plymouth. Like, there are games where you can rotate Bradley in. He started the Champions League. You'd expect Trent to start against Bournemouth and Spurs. You'd then expect him to start against PSV for Bradley and Plymouth. And then you'd expect Trent to come back in for Everton and Wolves. So I just think that the Liverpool fixtures are set out in such a way they don't need to play Bradley in the Premier League. And I haven't seen anything from Slot recently which makes me think that Bradley is even close to being first choice ahead of Trent. So basically, Alisson and Trent will be a very nice situation to be in. And then my other 3 defenders, outside of obviously Van den Berg, is Munoz, Gabriel, Robinson. I, of course, need to bench one this week. I would say the one that I'm least likely to bench is actually Gabriel. I know a lot of people will point to the fact that Saliba's not there, the fact that they do look a little bit weaker defensively. They are making mistakes as well. And Wolves have been attacking fairly well under Vitor Pereira. I just think Gabriel is so elite. And I still think, because of the system that they play, Arsenal are still a really decent defence, even in the absence of Saliba. And in the game in the Champions League last night on Wednesday, Gabriel had 3 humongous chances from set pieces. Now, yes, he missed all 3 of them. One of them was registered as a big chance. He accumulated just under 0.5 XG. The man is monstrous from set pieces, and they still absolutely aim for him from every set piece. So what you've got is a centre-back with unbelievable goal threat, and someone that's actually good in the air as well, with a decent fixture, although it is away, playing in a pretty good defence. Like, I just think he's absolutely elite. So for me, it's just not an option to bench Gabriel. I know a lot of people disagree, and that's absolutely fine, but it's not an option. So I think I need to start one of Munoz and Robinson. In isolation, I think this is extremely close. Because Munoz, for me, does still have the greater attacking threat. I know Robinson's the one picking up the assist at the moment. Munoz hasn't got that big return yet. But he's been creating big chances and getting them. I think he's been very unfortunate. If you watch Mateta's goal, by the way, in the West Ham game, not the penalty, the other one, if he'd have just looked to his right rather than shooting, and I'm glad he shot, of course, Munoz was open as the furthest attacking player. There have been so many times when Munoz is right up there, which won't necessarily always even be picked up on the stats. I think he's very close to an attacking return. So I think Munoz is marginally more attacking than Robinson. But I would say that Brentford are a better attack than Manchester United. So in terms of clean sheet potential, in my opinion, I've not really looked at the odds. I'd say Robinson has a slightly higher chance for a clean sheet. Munoz has a slightly higher chance for an attacking return. And so I feel like I just want to back the attacking return. And also, I don't own a Brentford attacker, right? I don't have Mbermo, I don't have Wissa. Whereas I do have Bruno Fernandes. So, to avoid a bit of a clash in my team and to put all of my eggs in one basket, I guess I just back Man United to score, which is not overly likely, but it's probably something I should do. So at the moment, that is why Munoz is starting ahead of Robinson. But in terms of the 2 defenders, I'm very happy to have them at the moment. I do have the option of doing something like Robinson or Munoz to Konate. It would obviously solve my benching headache this week because I'd start Konate, and then it would mean that I would have to keep Sanchez. But I just think in my position, Sanchez to Alisson makes a lot more sense than selling one of my defenders for Konate. So that is the setup right now. Van den Berg will stay 3rd sub for the foreseeable future. The fixtures coming up for Brentford really aren't bad. So there is a potential in the future that I do start to play him from sort of game week 25 and beyond. For now, that's the defence. Pencil in Sanchez to Alisson. Let's look at the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, and I am pretty happy with it in terms of 4 of them. One of them very unhappy with, in all honesty, and I'll probably look to sell in the foreseeable future. But 4 of them I am pretty happy with, which is obviously Salah, Palmer, Fernandes, Rodgers. They're the ones starting. On Salah, he probably is going to be my captaincy option. I was going to say it's clear cut. It's honestly not clear cut for me. I think that Isak is an exceptional option. In their last 5 home games, Southampton have conceded 38 big chances. They are averaging almost 3.5 XGC across their last 5 home games. I can't put into words how bad that is defensively. 3.5 expected goals conceded is humongous. They are just awful defensively. Like, to be averaging over 7 big chances a game conceded. I mean, we know that Brentford put 5 past them. That was 11 big chances in that game. Whistle was involved in 6 big chances in that game. He had 5 and he created 1. Chris Wood goes and gets a 12-pointer. They are not a good defence at all. I think Isak will be big chance central. I would be surprised if he's not involved in 3 or 4 big chances. If you were to tell me that one of Salah or Isak get a hat-trick, I'd say it's Isak. Salah hasn't really gone... That's a liar. Salah's goal threat and assist threat combined is probably more than Isak, but Isak's just such a goal threat. So if one was going to get a hat-trick, I would expect it to be Isak. But the thing is, midfielders have to do far less. Extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet. If Salah gets a clean sheet, which looks relatively possible, plus 2 goals, it's an extra 3 points immediately there. And because it's at home, and because it's at Anfield, I probably am backing Salah just about. But I think if I were chasing, let's say I was outside the top 1 million, or I was chasing down a mini-league leader, I would be very, very tempted by Alexander Isak. So I'll just throw that one out there into the universe for you. If you're chasing a little bit or you want to go different, I really don't mind it. But yeah, for me at the moment, I'm struggling to lean. I think if Salah was playing away, I'd be tempted to go Isak. But at Anfield against Ipswich, he's blanked a couple of games in a row. We know how much he wants to be top goal scorer. He's desperate for it. I could see him doing very well here. A lot of chatter about selling Palmer, benching Palmer. I've said multiple times I'm not selling and I'm not benching. Palmer is absolutely elite. His goal threat has dropped off in the last 6, but his assist threat has gone up. He's on penalties. He takes some set pieces. I think there'll be goals in this game. We just saw City lose 4-2 to PSG after going 2-0 up. They are a mess defensively. Their mentality is still not there. Lots of people pointing to their recent form. Yeah, they've played the likes of Ipswich, Leicester, Everton, West Ham. They've not been particularly difficult fixtures, so you would expect them to play well. Chelsea, for everything that we say about them, it's a much more difficult fixture than what they've faced recently in the Premier League. So I'm gonna keep and start Palmer, and I hope that he does very well in this game. I hate this fixture for Fernandes. If I had a better 8th attacker, I honestly would be slightly tempted to bench him. But once again, because he's on penalties, I equally don't like that. I would be surprised if United score more than 1 or 2 goals in this game. Craven Cottage is a very difficult place to go to, and Manchester United are playing so badly at the moment. So let's see how they get on. I'm not hoping for much. Maybe a penalty, maybe a cheeky assist, maybe I might get a goal from him, but I would be very surprised if I get more than 1 attack in return. But beyond that, Crystal Palace at home isn't awful, but then he goes into Spurs, Everton, Ipswich, and he's got Leicester in blank game week 29. My issue with Fernandes right now is that unless I sell one of my forwards or sell Trent, and I'm obviously not going to sell Trent now, but in the future, I don't have a very good route to Brian Mbeumo. And Brian Mbeumo is a player that I desperately want. So as of right now, if I want Mbeumo, which I really do, it's looking like it might have to be Fernandes that gets sold unless I downgrade one of my forwards, which I will discuss. So that's just something going through my mind right now. But the longer I leave it, like if I was going to sell Fernandes, it needs to be now, really. Because Fulham and Crystal Palace across the next 2 are probably as bad as it gets. Because then after that, it's Spurs, Everton, Ipswich, like I said. And I actually really like those 3 fixtures. So that's something to think about. But for now, Fernandes, I think, will be staying. And I've got Rodgers back in the starting 11 against West Ham at home. Aston Villa were really disappointing in the Champions League. They started the Champions League season so well. A couple of really disappointing performances. I think it was against Club Brugge before this one here, where they're just not fully at it. I think a lot of the Aston Villa players are quite tired. It does worry me a little bit going into this West Ham game, but I still fancy them to do quite well against West Ham at home. Rodgers has just been ticking along really nicely this season. Every time I watch Aston Villa, he's there or thereabouts. And what I mean by that is even if his data doesn't look perfect, you watch the games and he's linking up with Watkins. He's on the edge of the box. He's always around the play And as a result, he can always pick up attacking returns, and his minutes are usually very secure as well. So it feels like a really decent fixture to play Rodgers. Obviously, my fifth midfielder is currently Enzo, who is second sub behind Robinson because of the Man City game. Not only has he been really disappointing, but then he picks up an injury as well. As of the time of me recording this, which is early Thursday morning, I don't have an update on Enzo Fernandez. I don't know if he's out long-term or not. In all honesty, it doesn't really affect my plans because I can't sell him for anyone interesting right now. I've got 1.5 in the bank. I think my selling price for Enzo is 4.9, which gives me 6.4 million in the bank. There is no one right now that I desperately want to buy for 6.4 million. The players that I really do want to buy is a Bournemouth midfielder, but not for at least 2 weeks. So game week 25 is when I really want to pick them up. Because if I bring in Kluivert or Semenyo now, well, I'd still bench them, right? I wouldn't start them ahead of any of my players. So that doesn't feel necessary right now. I would like maybe Luis Diaz, but then I'm so far off being able to afford that. I think like 1.1 million more I'd need to find. And then maybe Brian Mbeumo, but I'm even further away from being able to afford that. So there's just no need for me to sell. I can't even do something like Enzo to Eze. I'm still a little bit of money off of doing that. So I just think for me right now, bench Enzo, wait and see if I have a better transfer in the future. And otherwise, in a couple of weeks, I can move Enzo to a Bournemouth midfielder or upgrade Enzo to Mbeumo, but by downgrading someone like Trent. Because if I do it in 25, 26, I would have got through the Ipswich and the double. So I have more options in terms of who I can downgrade. So it's not that I think Enzo's a good option, right? I'm very happy to now move Enzo on. He's not really done it for me, but there's just no point doing it this week. I think there are other priorities to do. And also, by the way, I should say, if I make the Sanchez to ALISSON move, I wouldn't even have 1.5 in the bank. I would have like 0.7 in the bank, I think it is, which makes it then even more difficult. At that point, I can only go up to a maximum of someone like Semenyo or Kluivert. So these are the things that I'm thinking about right now. I would be surprised if I make a midfield transfer. I'm pretty happy with that for the foreseeable future. Let's now look at the front three. So moving on to the front three, I'm really happy with where things are right now. Wood and Mateta between them getting 8 attacking returns in 3 game weeks is obviously exceptional. It's one of the main reasons that I've been able to avoid big red arrows in the past, and then this game week obviously pick up a decent green arrow. And so I can't see myself taking them out. But if I want to go out there and get Cody Gakpo, I probably have to remove Wood or Mateta, as I'll discuss in a second. So on Mateta, the thing is with Mateta, he's been so good for me, but he's also the number one asset that's causing me issues in terms of where I can go moving forward. But on him first himself, great fixtures actually over the next 3. Brentford is a great fixture. Whether or not you buy into the home versus away thing for Brentford, they largely have been a little bit weaker away from home this season. So firstly, that's great. And regardless, they're just not a good defence. As much as they limited Liverpool from getting huge chances, they still conceded 37 shots in that game. And they're our bottom 5 defence in the Premier League this season. Over a large enough sample size now, they just give up chances. And the way that Crystal Palace are starting to tick a little bit, I would expect them to get at least a few big chances in this game. Whether it's Mateta that gets them, I don't know. Whether he takes the next penalty after his absolutely stinking penalty in game week 22, again, I don't know. It could be that Eze takes the next one. But regardless, the minutes have been great, the performances have been great, and the fixtures over the next 3 look great. Even after Brentford, United and Everton, United are so poor at the moment, and Everton under Moyes look like they'll be favouring more attacking play as opposed to being really defensive like they were under Dyche. After that, he's got Fulham and Villa, which are slightly trickier games, but then he goes into an Ipswich at home game. So I actually really like the fixtures for Mateta up until game week 28. So he will be staying. The issue I have is that he's now, I think, 7.3, 7.4 million. It's a very tricky price point because if I had João Pedro in there, or if I had Calvert-Lewin in there, as a lot of people will be doing, Enzo to Mbeumo becomes a lot easier. I don't think I can still quite do it for free, but what it does do, it gets me so much closer. And then all I need to do is something simple, like even Trent down to Van Dijk in the future if I want to keep a Liverpool defender, or Robinson down to Castagna. I only have to make one small downgrade then to get Enzo up to Mbeumo. But because I have that really tricky price point of Mateta in my team, getting Enzo to Mbeumo, which is really the plan moving forward, becomes extremely difficult. So I don't want to sell it Mateta, and I don't think I can justify it with his current performances. And I don't want to. Like, I love owning the man, but he is blocking me a little bit in terms of what I can do with my team. And also, if I had Jackson instead of Mateta, or if I had any other player instead of Mateta, then bringing in Gakpo feels very easy as well. A lot of people are doing something like João Pedro or Jackson to Gakpo because they're not very happy with them. I'm too happy with Mateta to sell him for Gakpo. So I love him. I'm not complaining, but it is making it obviously a little bit more difficult for me. If I am to sell one of these players for Gakpo, it's actually Chris Wood. I brought him in 3 game weeks ago. He's returned in all of those game weeks, got 4 attacking returns. He's done the business for me, and I'm very glad I bought him. I think he's had 4 price rises since I brought him in as well. So largely, maybe even 5, largely very happy with the transfer. And do I think that Chris Wood will still score goals against Bournemouth, Brighton, Fulham, Newcastle and Arsenal? I absolutely do, 100%. But once again, if I want Gakpo, I can't bring myself to sell Isak or Mateta, so it would have to be Wood. And let's say I ignore Gakpo. Let's say I do the Sanchez to Alisson move, which probably makes more sense for my team. Another option that I have to go and get in Burmo in the future is downgrade Wood to Stewart, and Stewart is a £4.4 million forward. So downgrade Wood all the way down. That gives me the funds to do Enzo to Mbeumo. That's a possibility for me, is to just downgrade Wood all the way, take all of that money out of that position, and upgrade Enzo. But then I would only have 7 attackers. But then when I look at my 7 attackers, I can start them pretty much every week. Rodgers is the only one you might not want to start every single week, like Chelsea and Crystal Palace after the 3 good fixtures. But also I don't mind doing it. He's a bit of a big game player and his minutes are always really good. So that's a possibility for me. If I just can't bring myself to sell Fernandes, to sell Mateta, maybe Chris Wood is the one to lose. But then again, how can you sell a man that is doing what he is right now? Either way, I don't think I need to make the move this week. And Burmo's got Crystal Palace. I've already got Munoz in my starting 11 anyway. They've been defending relatively well. And I think I'm happy to just give it one more week to decide how I would like to try and get in Burmo in. Because the thing is, if Mateta picked up an injury, or if Fernandes picked up an injury, or even if Isak picked up an injury, and I ended up selling Chris Wood down to a cheap forward to bring in Burmo, I would then look at it and say, well, why did I bother doing that? I could have just waited a week and then sold. So I'm not hoping for an injury, of course, but it might be that an easier route offers itself up. Or, I don't know, let's say Gabriel picked up an injury. Then I could do him all the way down to fodder and just start Munoz, Robinson and Trent, for example. So there are other things that could end up allowing me to free up the funds that way. Finally, on Isak, he's got Southampton this week. There is no chance of me selling him again in the future. There is the possibility because the fixtures are really tough. City, Forest, Liverpool, even the Fulham game next week, it's not a great run. And we know that Newcastle have a very good chance of blanking in 29. So if he's got a difficult run of fixtures followed by a blank, maybe there is it might be worth the risk of moving Isak on, especially if it allows me to, again, go out there and get an Mbeumo in an easier fashion. As of right now, though, I don't have any plans to sell any of my 3 forwards, which sadly means that Gakpo isn't a possibility, I don't think, unless I want to sell Chris Wood. I think Gakpo's the 3rd best Liverpool asset, but I do think that the likes of Alisson, Van Dijk, Konate, if he's going to start every game, they aren't that far behind. So as of right now, with my team looking the way it is, the plan is to do Sanchez to Alisson. I would then have, I think, 0.7 or 0.8 in the bank and 2 free transfers. But then going into next week, I would then have the 3 free transfers again. So I'd still be in a really, really strong position. That's the team. Let me know what you think of which Liverpool asset to bring in and what transfers to make. Let's now take a look at my watch list for future weeks and also plan ahead a little bit and show you what my future transfers could look like. So guys, as I said, the plan for this week is to bring in one of Alisson or Gakpo, and I'm very much leaning probably like 95% Alisson, and then just in case something happens to one of my forwards, I've put Gakpo on the watch list, because again, if any of them are an injury doubt or anything like that, or I have reason to believe that I want to sell one of them, I could still go out there and get Gakpo, and I probably will leave it, because Gakpo's now double risen anyway, he's not going to rise again before the deadline, I'll probably leave it right before the deadline, and I'll make that decision, maybe on the deadline stream or maybe just before. So yeah, let's say for now, penciled in Sanchez to Alisson. In game week 24, Brentford play against Spurs. So I do ideally, I think that looks like a great fixture, want to go out there and get a Brian Mbeumo or a Wissa, and the preference is absolutely going to be Brian Mbeumo. The reason that Calvert-Lewin's on the list is obviously he has the double game week involving Leicester. I don't think that Everton players are necessarily that desirable. But if I want to go out there and get Mbeumo, it might be that I need to make a downgrade. And something like, and I really hate the idea of this, but Mateta to Calvert-Lewin could be a way to do that. So I've just put him on there because he's a cheap forward that might end up facilitating the move. And then beyond that, going into game week 25, I'm looking at the Bournemouth assets for their fixture against Southampton at home. It feels like a great... I think Southampton away. It's a great entry point. We know that Kluivert and Semenyo's minutes look very good with Eva Nilsson and Unai injured. Bournemouth are performing at an incredibly high level, and they've got a fixture against Brentford at home in game week 29. So I just think those Bournemouth cheap midfielders look such fantastic value. And I've also put Mateus Cunha on here. I think he's got Liverpool in 25, but then in 26 and beyond, the fixture run is really, really good for him. And I think he's got Southampton in blank game week 29. So I feel like Cunha, for that little spell in the lead up to the blank game week, is another player. This is assuming that he's still at Wolves, of course, is a player that I'm definitely considering. So that's the rough sort of plan over the next few weeks. If I jump over to Fantasy Football Hub to just show you how that looks. Again, if you want to get access to Fantasy Football Hub, there'll be a link down below. I don't know if they're still offering the 30-day free trial. Feel free to check if they are, but they're definitely still offering the 30% off if you use my link. So if you want to check that out, link down below. It'll allow you to plan ahead. You can also get access to price changes within your own team, predicted 3-game week spell. They'll give you AI recommended transfers as well, which is all very useful. So what I've done here is I've penciled in ALISSON for Sanchez. That gives me a game week rating of 99%. And I do think the team would look very strong at that stage. I have the option to go and make further moves after that, but I think that would be the only move for this week. Then going into game week 24, so I would have ALISSON, Trent and Salah with the double. My defence is really not looking great. I've got Gabriel against City, Munoz against United, and then Robinson against Newcastle. There aren't many defenders that I can see myself bringing in that would really improve the team. Because like Brentford, yes, have a nice fixture run, but it's Spurs. I don't want a Brentford defender. I mean, I have Vandenberg on the bench. There aren't many teams that got a really nice fixture run from there on out that I would want to go and buy a defender from. A lot of other people will have Lewis Hall or Ola Aina. They've got much better fixtures this week against Fulham and Brighton. But I'm not going to go out there and get a Newcastle player that's probably going to blank in 29 or a Forest defender who after Brighton have a really tough run of fixtures. So I think I just have to suck it up that I've just not got a very good defence for game week 24 outside of ALISSON and Trent. The midfield is looking really decent. I've got obviously Salah, Palmer, Rodgers and Fernandes all with good fixtures. I even have Enzo against West Ham on the bench if he's fit then. And the front three is okay as well. Isak against Fulham, Mateta against United and Wood against Brighton. It doesn't look that great, my team this week. It says game week rating 89% and I'm not surprised. But there aren't that many players that I'm that desperate for. The only one would be Bryan Mbeumo. So I wanted to show you what my options are. So let's say that I don't want to sell Fernandes and I don't want to sell Rodgers. My only route to Mbeumo would be in for Enzo. So if I just get Mbeumo put in, what I need to free up then is 2.2 million. So the first option is a £4.6 million forward at the moment. It might end up being less than that for Chris Wood. So like I say, just complete fodder for Chris Wood, something like Stewart. And then what I would have to do is, wait, let me just confirm that transfer, make transfer. Mbeumo comes in for Stewart. And then it's a 3-5-2 with barely any bench cover. That might be okay for the foreseeable future. And as I said, when I look at my attackers, Salah, Palmer, Rodgers, Fernandes, Mbeumo, Mateta, Isak, I don't ever want to bench them. If they even play like City, Liverpool, Arsenal, I still just play them because they're all top quality assets. All of them on penalties, other than Rodgers. And Rodgers, like I said, is a bit of a big game killer. And also, for what else he facilitates, is absolutely fine. So that's one option. The other option is rather than selling Chris Wood down to Stewart, is I've been off Mateta for someone like Calvert-Lewin, which I think I can still afford. So, do you know what? Let me reset my team. Loading, fetching, optimizing. Okay. Yeah, right. Chris Wood's back in. Perfect. So if I actually instead do Enzo to Mbeumo, a little bit of live tinkering with FPL Raptor, which is making sure I'm actually recording this. And then Mateta, I think I can do to Calvert-Lewin. No, I can't. I lied. Oh, I remember. I have to make another transfer. So it's a Calvert-Lewin like that. So this would involve a lot more transfers. It would involve selling Mbeumo, but I keep Chris Wood and I keep 8 attackers. Then I would have to make one more outside of that. So something like Munoz down is a possibility. The run of fixtures isn't as good from there on in terms of defensive assets. I obviously have the option to downgrade Gabriel if I want to, or I lose Robinson. I think right now it would probably be Munoz. It doesn't feel fantastic selling him, but Munoz down to any cheap defender and then just start Robinson this week as a possibility. That would give me another doubler in Calvert-Lewin. It would mean that from there on out, Calvert-Lewin is my 8th attacker rather than Stewart. So it's basically how much do I want to keep Mateta versus Wood and how much do I want to save that extra free transfer. I obviously don't have to go out and get Bryan Mbeumo. The run of fixtures is really good though. And I feel like Spurs at home is arguably the best of the bunch. After that, it's West Ham, Leicester, Everton, Villa, a couple of home games in there. And then in the blank game week, at least he has a fixture. It's against Bournemouth away, but Mbeumo, because of the penalties, the set pieces, the goal threat, the assist threat, he's a player that every week he's just going to continue battering my rank. And everyone that's sat there with Anthony Gordon has a very easy route to Brian Mbeumo. And I feel like every week I'm going to be sat there just thinking, well, my team's done well, but Brian Mbeumo keeps punishing me. So I do kind of want to get there. Now, a lot of people are just going to say, you've got Bruno Fernandes, you muppet. Just sell Bruno Fernandes for Brian Mbeumo. And I may well end up doing that. My concern is, in 25, he's got Spurs himself. Great fixture. Everton, with the current way they're playing under Moyes, they're not as solid defensively. Then it's Ipswich at home. Arsenal at home's not great, but then it's Leicester away in blank game week 29. That's actually a really nice run of fixtures for Bruno Fernandes. So I'm less keen on selling him as a result. But maybe that is the more straightforward route, and maybe that's the one I'd have to accept. I'll leave it there. Like I said, if you want to do your own tinkering and planning ahead, make sure to check out Fantasy Football Hub. There'll be a link down below. Let me know what you think of the plans. So the plan right now is simply to do Sanchez to ALISSON, roll the rest of the transfers, and then think about what else I want to do ahead of double game week 24. So guys, there we have it. That is my game week 23 team selection video with a little bit of planning ahead in there as well. If you did enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. Tomorrow there will be a deadline decisions video, and then there'll be, of course, a deadline stream on Saturday. It is a later deadline at 1:30 p.m. The first games are the 3 p.m. kickoffs, so the deadline stream will start at 11:30 a.m. So if I don't see you until then, see you on Saturday morning. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.